Welcome. In front of me is a VIVO V29, and today I will go over unboxing along with a quick look at the device itself. So anyway, without further ado, let's just get straight into it. So this is a relatively newly released device. I am a little bit late to the party with it, but in any case, let's pop it open. And inside we get obviously the device. Come on, will you slide away? There we go. We have a screen protector applied, like a plastic one. Then below that we have a case, silicone one, but again, still nice that it comes with a device. Some paperwork, so I'm gonna just yeet that to the side, and we get a absolute brick of a charging unit right here, and this is an max 80 watts charging speed. Pretty good. And then obviously a cable type A to type C with a SIM eject tool. So there we go. Let's get that to the side. I should have probably turned on the device, but oh well, mistakes are made. Interestingly enough, something that I noticed, this looks like a flash right here of sorts. Pretty interesting. But in any case, let's start off with the display. So this is a 6.7 inch display with a resolution of 1260 by 2800. It is also a AMOLED display, 1 billion colors, 120 Hz refresh rate, supporting HDR10 Plus certification, and additionally, it is a curved display, as you can see. So I am a massive fan of that. I absolutely love displays that are curved. It makes the gesture navigation feel much better. But continuing on, it doesn't actually give us any kind of info or doesn't really say that this is some kind of fluid display garbage like most other manufacturers do. So they just kind of stick with the AMOLED only, and you can see that it's curved. Now it doesn't actually state the display brightness, which is a little bit of a shame, but it is an AMOLED display, so it should be able to get relatively bright. Now, continuing on, it is also supporting, or boasting more like, 90% screen to body ratio with a pixel density of 400 and about 50 pixels per inch. I'll actually go back, I don't want to, from Germany, let's just select the correct one right here. And user like agreement and privacy policy. Okay, I guess I have to select all of them. Interesting. Select offline. Now the reason I'm setting this up is just so we can in a second see what that is at the back, if it's a flash or whatever. And additionally, just so people can see how the skin for the Android 13 looks like on this device. So there we go. We have a pretty nice wallpaper set up by default that showcases the display pretty nicely right here with the AMOLED. Basically the black background right here, it's basically turned off, so the pixels don't really emit any light. So it gives you a nice contrast ratio right here. Now, let's check out the camera, I guess, and see what that is. Yes, I have read and agreed. Cool. Can I turn on permanent flash? Flash on. Flash auto, spotlight. Oh, so it's called spotlight. Ooh, that is actually brighter than I expected. Oh yeah, especially when you're looking at it from like this kind of, you can kind of see like at an angle it's not as bright, but if I just post it, like flip it to the camera, it is blowing it away. We also have temperature right here, so that's actually pretty interesting. We can turn that off. So you can see the difference. Pretty nice. That is actually a nice inclusion, and this isn't actually a flash. The flash would be this, just to showcase this. Anyway, while we're at the topic of cameras, let's talk about the 2 or 3 cameras that we have right here, though by the looks of it we only have 2. Oh boy, looking at that flash, now I see that the ring everywhere I look. Probably not the best thing to look at bright objects. But in any case, so we're looking at a 50 megapixel wide sensor right here, optical image stabilization, PDA, AF. Then we got an 8 megapixel ultra wide and a 2 megapixel depth. That's why I said that we only have like 2 cameras. The 2 megapixel depth sensor is just a sticker camera. It serves no purpose. Then at the front, we actually have a pretty decent camera that is a 50 megapixel wide sensor, and with the back cameras you can shoot at 4K 30 and 1080p 30. For some reason there is no 60. And with the front one, again 1080p 30 frames. You don't get the 4K though, even though the lens rate or the sensor right here is a 50 megapixel, just as the back one. To keep in mind, this one is f2.0 22 millimeters, while the back one is f1.9. Doesn't really say how many millimeters, but in any case, so yeah, there are different sensors with the same pixel count. Now, continuing on into the internals of this device, this phone comes with a Snapdragon, and this is a Snapdragon 778G supporting a 5 gigahertz connectivity on here, so that's pretty good. It comes with by default 128 gigabytes of storage and 8 gigabytes of RAM, though the lowest end obviously might be a little bit low in storage for some people, and there is no expandable storage. I do want to point that out. But you can go up to 256 gigs with still 8 gigs, or 256 with 12 gigs of RAM. So to be honest, I think the sweet spot right here, the best option would be the 256 with 8 gigabytes of RAM, because it gives you a decent storage increase, basically double of the cheaper option, and also keeps the same 8 gigabytes of RAM, which I would argue is sufficient enough for a phone like this. Now, it's also running a UFS 2.2 storage type, so again, it's not the best, but it's going to do the job pretty well. Obviously for like 4K video editing and stuff like that on a phone, that might be a little bit on the slow side, but for most people, or majority, the storage speed right here for read and write should be sufficient enough. To the point, just to clarify this, that you won't really see much of a difference between like super premium devices in terms of like read and writes, I mean. Now, continuing with this, what else did I miss right here? Just kind of trying to look at it. I didn't mention the battery size right here. So we have a 4600 milliampere battery, which is a little bit on the lower side. Typically we have something like 5000 milliamps, but I do want to point out this device is relatively thin all around, light, so it does make sense that the battery here wouldn't be as big. And the device does feel pretty nice in hand, with the curved edges on the front and at the back as well, as you can see. So it is a really nicely designed device. I do like it. So last thing to mention would be the price of this device, and the device comes at about 500 euros. So it's basically a mid-range device, or as mid-range as you can get, considering flagships cost about 1,000 to even higher now, because apparently inflation makes the prices go up on devices quicker than the actual inflation does. Makes sense. But in any case, so this comes at 500, putting it smack in the middle of what you would consider a mid-range device. And for that price, you actually get a pretty decent specs in terms of RAM, the processor in here, the display. So I would say everything here is actually pretty good, and anyone who would pick up this device probably would be satisfied if you never used like a, for instance, a flagship device, and you had usually like a lower end devices. This is a mid-range device, but it will, for majority of the people, probably feel like a flagship. Where it will suffer a little bit is most certainly in the camera department. It might have a 50 megapixel sensor, but the post-processing of images most likely won't be as good as, for instance, Pixel devices have, or Samsung or Apple. But in terms of actual experience, speed, and just how snappy the device feels, at this point, Snapdragon, the processor that is in here, the Snapdragon 778, will be, for most people, basically as quick, by the way it just looks like and feels like, to most other flagship devices. I would basically argue. So there might be like a couple milliseconds longer that it opens up apps compared to like absolute flagships, for instance like the Samsung S23 Ultras and stuff like that. But in all honesty, it's such a small difference that most people won't really notice it that much. Now, where it might have a little bit of a worse time is in the storage department when it comes down to like opening apps. For instance, iPhones use an NVMe storage, so UFS 2.2 compared to the NVMe will be a bit slower. And when it comes down to like loading applications from the storage, obviously iPhone will do it significantly quicker compared to this one. But still, for the typical phone user that wants to browse the web, make calls, messages and all that stuff, and just use some relatively basic applications, and even light gaming, this phone will chew through this without much of a problem. Gaming here should also be pretty good, I would say. Obviously you want to be running Genshin Impact here on max settings, but I believe just like low settings should be able to run on this device relatively smoothly, and any kind of other device or game that is not as demanding as that one is will run on this device without much of a problem. This is a relatively capable processor, so obviously it will chew through most tasks that you throw at it, outside of like the super heavy ones. So there we go. Now to kind of finish that off, a couple things that I didn't mention would touch upon would be the build quality right here and additional features. So number one, we do have under display fingerprint sensor, which we can set up, though I'm not really gonna go into. We have fingerprint power button and volume rockers. Fingerprint is under the display, like I mentioned. Then at the bottom we have a Type-C speakers and a SIM tray. And just to pop that out, if I can grab that, there we go. Like I mentioned before, this will not have expandable storage, it's just a dual SIM from either side. So you can use two different SIM cards. Now on the left side, we have absolutely nothing, as you can see. And then at the top, we just have a microphone holes right here and some branding. So what does it say right here? Professional portrait. See if I can get that in. Oh, there we go. It's a little bit visible. As you can see, we have just a branding. It's barely visible. It takes angling the device at a specific angle to actually have a light reflect off of that, so it's not as obnoxiously visible as some other devices. Now at the back we do have our branding, and the finish right here is matte finish, and I believe this is glass. Let's actually check. So this is glass front and glass back. So yeah, it is glass. So there we go. That's the design. And last thing would be the case, which comes provided with the device. Fits nicely over the device, protects the cameras. No problem right here, especially that it comes for free included with the device. So that's obviously thumbs up for this. And obviously also thumbs up for the absolute brick right here that will charge your device stupidly quick. And let's see if they have any advertised charging speeds. They do. So wired 80 watts from 1% to 50 in 17 minutes. At least that's what they're advertising. So again, insanely quick charging speed right here. Now, I assume they didn't go to 100 with this kind of metric because usually charging speed falls off a little bit past a specific point. The battery gets heated up and it will then throttle the charging just so the battery actually doesn't, blow up like some other devices do. So yeah. So anyway, with that being said, it's a pretty nice device, and everything here on this device should be basically performing similar to like a high-end device at just a lower price. It's not running obviously the flagship specs right here, but for typical user, I think this phone should not disappoint. So anyway, with that being said, if you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.